Hi, on today's episode of the podcast, I share my conversation with my friend Hillary, and we talked about reframing your narrative, choosing to move forward through experiences, enjoying the now and focusing on the moment, and many other such things. Hope you enjoy.
I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but let's see how it goes. Um, I have a guest today, and my guest today is Hillary. Hillary is a research expert, and she does a bunch of other things, including running a community called Her Synergy, which I'm also a part of. And we're going to be chatting about like UX, friendship, career, whatever comes to mind as we go. And let's see, it's really freestyling in the moment, very, very lightly edited or even unedited sometimes. So yeah, let's go. So what is on your mind today, Hillary?
Okay, so today what's on my mind is actually I was listening to some of your podcast episodes, and I think the one I listened to last is the one you talked about, where you talked about luck.
Mm,
And I was just thinking about how that has kind of played in my life because you mentioned how you've sort of been lucky career wise and how that has led you to UX and all of that. And for me, I thought about the fact that mine has kind of been the opposite case where I think I've been not to even be negative or anything because I'm a very optimistic person in general, but I think I've been lucky in several aspects of life. And okay, so for example, I'll talk about my school. I don't know if we talked about this when we had that call we had a while ago, but or if you know anything about this. Well, as you know, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I had like 2 years left to finish my bachelor's degree. Came back to Nigeria, tried renewing my visa, didn't grant it to me, and I was on a full scholarship. So because of that, I wasn't able to, and there was no way I would go to any other country because again, full scholarship. I just had 2 years left. So it just seemed like an impossible thing at the time for me to finish school and get a bachelor's degree. And so for the longest time, I kind of wallowed in my self pity and was just like, kind of made myself a victim of life where I was just like, you know what? I mean, I tried my best. Maybe this isn't meant to be. This isn't meant to happen. Um, Again, that's an unlucky thing because if I got that visa, I would have been done with school and all of that. Maybe even done advanced degrees I wanted to do as well. Um, but yeah, but recently, over the past 2 years, I've just been in a more, I think I'm more aware of what I want in life, and I've been in a more charge of what you want type headspace. And so now I'm like, okay, well, sure, like I was unlucky in that aspect and several other aspects in life. Like the fact that after 2 years of school, my mom couldn't really afford to keep paying for our tuition. But that doesn't mean that I will now let life happen to me and won't like do my very best to take control of the situation and turn that luck around, whatever that means. And so now I'm making plans to go back to school, even if that means I'm starting from year one, even if that means I will be working full time while doing school night time. So yes, that's something that was on my mind, and I'm very glad I now have this mindset shift because I don't think it's a very good thing to kind of let life happen to you and just let things go the way they're meant to go. But yeah.
yeah, that is such an interesting thing because I think I was reading something some time ago about how like the things that happen to it's not really about things that happen to us or things that we experience, is the interpretation and the meaning that we give to it that shapes how we're able to move forward from it. So if you think about like in your journey, and I don't know the details and specifics and everything of the day to day of living that, having to not being able to complete your program and basically having to start again. On the other hand, I think like, do you think that if you had finished that program, you would have the career path that you have now?
I actually don't think so. I think I would have gone more the finance route because that's where I was heading. I did my internship at a finance company. They wanted to offer me a full time job there. And I wonder what that would have been like or looked like, or if that would have been good for me, because I personally don't think I'm the best at math. It takes me a while. Like I have to do extra reading and studying to get when it comes to math or things that have to do with calculations.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't think so.
So that is very interesting because I think about like the one of the things that I think about a lot is how there are so many possible decision paths that we make in life and so many possibilities. And sometimes the decision is taken away from us in some scenarios, like you not being able to go back to school or me having to drop out of the master's program that I was doing because of things outside of my control.
Mhm.
And sometimes we make the decision by ourselves based on the information that we have available to us at the time. And I just think a lot about all the paths not followed. Like, if I hadn't continued doing UX and I had gone to school like I planned to do the PhD in social psychology or whatever, like, how would my life look different? And is that the life that I would want? Do you ever think about that?
I think about the fact that and not to even get really really deep and overshare anything, but for me personally, I think about the fact that, because again, so my parents are separated, single mom, dad left when I was 10. I was very close to my dad before he left. So I always think about, and my dad is a very smart person. He was very focused on us going to like being at school and doing very, very good at school. And before he left, we were the best in our classes, or each of were three at the time, three girls. But after he left, it just kind of went down the drain in the way that my sisters weren't able to focus on school as much. And then for me, I had to work a little bit harder to now grasp concepts that were easy for me to grasp before. So I
Mm,
always think, oh, what if my dad had stayed, or what if I had a present dad, or what if my mom was just, because again, my mom had me when she was in school, she couldn't finish uni. What if my mom actually, and my mom is a very smart person, what if she went through school and she ended up being a lawyer like she wanted to be? Just so many scenarios.
yeah.
But I think I now understand that again, there's absolutely no way we can change these things, right? It's like I like to
Mm,
fantasize a lot about paths not taken. Um, but there, so I'm now just focused on present and taking charge of my situation. Another thing I think about is also alternate paths that I could take right now in my life, or just
mm,
making choices or deciding. So whether it's, oh, should I stay in Nigeria and try to make things work here, or should I travel out to, or should I move to the UK? I know I don't really like the UK. I mean, I don't really like the weather in the UK, and there are a few things I don't like. At the same time, I also know that my career might not go further than I want, than it's meant to, if I stay in Nigeria. So it's like, what do I decide to do? And I saw a video with this Harvard psychologist or whatever, and she was talking about how a lot of students, although I think the example she gave is very, in comparison, it seems superficial, but no, I anyway. So she was talking about how for her students, they are always just like, it kills them deciding whether to go to Harvard or Yale or this school or that school or this path or that path. And like, the truth is that you never really know. I mean, sure, you can outweigh your pros and cons, but how do you
mm.
really know what is right for you, right? Maybe if you're a Christian, you can pray to God and see where your heart kind of lies, or what God guides you to do. But and she said, like, just choose one and try to make it right however you can. Okay, so if you
Mm.
choose Yale, if it's not the, if you see that you're struggling at Yale, or you really don't like Yale, then transfer to the other school after a year or whatever. Like, just choose.
Do something, yeah.
Yeah, and I really like that, because that's what I used to struggle with, is like just thinking a lot, because I think a lot, I fantasize a lot, so many scenarios. And it's like, okay, well, I will just choose one, and if it's not right, life is I still have a lot of time. I'll make it right, or do the other one, go after the other one, since I've already tried this one that's not right.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way to look at it because what I was saying earlier about there's so many decision points in your life and you never know how it will play out. So if you just stay there thinking, should I do this? Should I do that? In a way, you're making a decision because the default decision will be made for you. Like life will just make the default decision for you if you don't make a decision. And in that instance, it's like if you're trying to choose between school, should I go to which should I accept? And you don't accept a particular what's the word now when you get admitted, then the timeline passes and then you don't go to school. And then there you have made a decision. You have just not gone to school, which is a different thing that you can then commit to and say, okay, next year I'm going to just pick a school or whatever. But then at that point, a decision has been made for you because you didn't make a decision for yourself. And it's just very intense. Sometimes it feels so intense, like, oh my God, this is going to shape the rest of my life. Which, while true, every decision you make shapes the rest of your life, and you can recover where you have made a bad decision, or you can do something new where something you thought was a good decision didn't work out. And in the episode that I'm going to publish soon, I talk a bit about like how do you know when you're being a focused visionary, focusing on the plan, on the map, and when you're just being crazy and you need to give up, like, this is foolishness. And it's also one of those things that is that kind of decision point, like, oh my God, what do I do? Do I give up now? Do I try to do something different now? Or do I pivot now? Or do I stay the course? Do you have thoughts about that?
That's one I also kind of struggle with. But based on, you said you're releasing an episode about that, so what were your thoughts on
So
your episode?
my thought is, like, it's hard to say because you always know only at the end, like,
Mm,
long, sometimes long after. Because if you think about, like, the example I give is I actually started thinking about this because I'm reading The Psychology of Money, and the example from the book is about how Mark Zuckerberg didn't sell to Yahoo for $1 billion, which at the moment seemed like a foolish decision, but
mm-hmm.
seems to have worked out for him. Now we can see, like, a couple of, like, 20, almost 20 years down the line, that it was a good decision for him not to sell. But then at the same time, Yahoo also didn't sell to, I can't remember who was trying to buy them, and that turned out to be a bad decision. The exact same things they did, but in hindsight, one turned out to be a good decision and one turned out to be a bad decision. So you never really know. And so it's still what we were saying about, you just have to choose something and be okay with your choice and keep moving and see how you can
This is so
pivot where
interesting.
you need to.
And I wonder if there are any I wonder if there's any information out there that kind of shows you or tells you or gives you a guide on, okay, if you feel this way, then it means it's the right pipe, or it means that, I don't know, because there's, like you said, there's really no way to know. But also, I think about Clubhouse as well, and how during COVID, um, I believe that they got an offer to,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think they took it, right. And now Clubhouse isn't really doing as it
Yeah.
was before. Um, but yeah, I wonder. Oh, I also think about, there's this Zikoko, because I like the Zikoko money thing that they do. The money where they talk about, yeah, where it's like a person's relationship with money, a real life person. And there's one if they released a few weeks or months ago about this one guy that he's just such a hard worker, and he got into crypto really really early, but then it's like so many things. Oh my god, this is the case, this is the exemplary, when people say it's your village people, because so many things, and I don't even remember half of
I
it,
think I
right?
read that one, and he lost like
Yeah,
millions,
yeah, like,
like
yeah, he lost his,
hundreds of thousands of dollars saved, and then he lost everything and had to start from scratch.
yeah, and he doesn't, or the fact that I had like 10, someone gifted him like 10 bitcoins or 20 bitcoins or
Can't
something.
find the
Yeah,
passkey.
or this, I think there were like five different things that happened to him, and I was just like, and he's still like okay with starting from the scratch and being like, I'll recover, or I'll still like be successful. But yeah, I was like, I'm sure it must kill him to know that Bitcoin is now what it is, and
Yeah.
he has 20 Bitcoins somewhere, but it doesn't know where it is, or the fact that those decisions he made with the money at the time, I guess they weren't necessarily the right decision to stick with, like, leave his money in that app. Um,
Yeah.
I'm
Oh yeah,
sure.
it was the FTX crash. He lost his
Yeah,
money
yeah,
in the FTX crash. Yeah.
yeah, FTX crash, yeah. I'm sure that must kill him, because that's a lot of money. And he's now in his 40s, which is when you need to, I guess, rest a bit and kind of see the
Yeah.
fruits of your effort. But
But I
but I
think
guess you never know.
in this kinds of situations, I think it's a mindset thing, right? Like, I think the
Mhm,
conclusion I'm coming to based on this conversation and things I've been reading is it's really a mindset thing. And we have to just, like, develop that mindset of, I can start again. Like, this is not the end of the world. And
mhm,
I can actually start again. Maybe I may not get to, like, where I was before, but I may go to a different place, a different side. And difference doesn't mean that is bad, or that like my life is over, it can seem difficult, right? But then when you also think about things like how normally people would tell you that, and there was a podcast you shared with me, the one with the people I mostly admire, and he was talking
Mm-hmm.
about how everybody thinks that, oh, is when if you don't create a startup when you're 19 or 20, you're never going to be successful. But statistically speaking, most of the successful businesses are people who are in their 40s, 50s, start them. And I think we have all of these like pressures that we put ourselves on, and that we need to do everything by this age, or we're never going to make it, whatever making it looks like. And I think is being able to recover from such losses and such quote unquote fails is really a function of the mindset that we have about our abilities. Because what he said was like he knows that he made the money before, he can make it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be very interesting because I feel like if I lost that much money, I would like literally just
Hmm.
sleep under a hole and be like, there's no point. What's the
Yeah,
point of life?
this is it.
But it was like his mindset was really just like, yeah, I can make the money back. Like I'm older now. I made the money when I was younger. I'm older now. I can still make the money again. Like it's still me. And I think that is like such a very important mindset to have. The question though is like, how do you develop that mindset if you don't have it already? Especially if in a situation where maybe when you were growing up, that was not the kind of thing that was modeled around you, where everybody was like, yeah, well, you failed, so like you can never succeed at it, whatever.
um, you know what? I think I based on my own experience, because again, like going back to when I was in high school and I would hear. So I always try to. I went to a deeper life, very Christian, rigid high school, and I would just always try to hide the fact that my parents were separated, and it's just my mom taking care of us. And I remember just different, because we used to have. I believe we used to have these sessions twice or three times a week where a minister or someone that's a teacher in the school would come and speak with us in the boarding house, in the girls' boarding house hostel. And I believe like three or four of them would always say, oh, like they'll talk about something and then they'll give an example. They will now say, and I heard this a lot in high school, like, oh, just like people without, or people that came from single parents, or people that just have a single parent, they'll end up being prostitutes, they won't end up being successful. And I remember sitting at the front, because I was short. I mean, I still am short, but I would always just sit at the front in these sessions. And it just seemed like they were talking directly at me, like they
Mm,
knew my situation, or even with not direct family, but what people were saying at the time, like, oh, she has four girls. That's probably why their dad left. It probably wouldn't be successful.
mm,
And yeah, it was difficult because for the longest time I struggled with self-esteem in high school specifically, and just like knowing my worth and knowing what I was called to do in life. But I think I was just so determined to prove everyone wrong and even prove myself wrong, that I was just, and I'm still working on these things, but for me, it just took, again, life experience,
yeah,
working hard, people letting me know how worthy I am of everything good in life, whether it's friends, family, my sisters. Reading definitely helps for sure, but also like reading stories or hearing stories of people like you that struggled but still made it way beyond what anyone could even imagine.
yeah.
But yeah, do you have any tips or strategies for that?
I think for me, because I also struggled with like my confidence and all of those things in high school. Like honestly, my childhood was so horrible. God, like my childhood, it's like I don't remember so many things from my childhood because my brain has just refused to remember those things. Sometimes I remember things, but it was so bad that I struggled a lot with like my confidence and myself, and it was just based on things that people said to me. And also my parents are separated. My parents have been separated for a very, very long time as well. So I relate to like that. But I didn't hear all of those because my dad is still present in my life, although
Mm.
my parents are separated, and I still talk to him, and we're still in touch, and we're still, I wouldn't say we're close, but we have a relationship. Um but yeah, like I think one of the things that really helped me, interestingly, is my faith. I went to Christian high school as well and Christian primary school, but I didn't really become a Christian until like 2020, end of 2020. I said I was a Christian, and all of those things, but I didn't really become a Christian until 2020, where, as my friends put it, God arrested me. And that really helped me in becoming even more certain in myself. Like, if Jesus died for me, I must be worth something.
Of course.
Um, so that really definitely drove me towards like unburdening myself from all those things. But even before that, it was also meeting people who spoke to me in a way that's like, you are human, you have value, and you have worth.
Mhm.
Um, Even before like the whole meeting Jesus thing, it was also just surrounding myself with people who spoke to me and spoke about me positively. And I've talked about this in a previous episode of podcast where I talked about how if people around you are constantly speaking negatively to you about you, you need to stop having those people around you. Like, remove them from your space if you can, or remove yourself from that space as much as you can. Like, create a space for yourself where the things that people are saying to you are affirming and positive, which is not to say that then you don't accept any form of like criticism that may be valid or like correction. But generally, like, the people around you should be speaking positive things into yourself and your life. Because then if you're always like only exposed to negative things about yourself, how then can you think that you can do good things? Like, it's so interesting for me because there's one thing that I've never doubted, which is my academic smarts. That was the one thing that everybody spoke positively about. Like, even though I felt really badly about so many other parts of my life, I have never doubted my academic abilities. And it's just because that is the vibe that I grew up in. Like, my grandpa has been calling me professor since I was 5 years old or something. Right. So that is it just goes to the point of the things that people say to you really matter.
Jumping in to say that there was one time where I doubted my academic abilities, and it was right after secondary school. I had written jam and I didn't go to the uni I wanted to go to, so I had to write it again, and then I failed the second time, and it was just a devastating experience for me because up until that time I hadn't had like any academic failures. There was another one, but it wasn't really a failure. But that's by the way. But yeah, I struggled for like a couple of months with my ability to succeed in school because of that. And I went into uni not thinking about graduating with a first class or anything, but just let me just graduate and finish this thing and be done with it. But along the line, at the end of my first semester, I regained my confidence, and since then, I have never doubted myself again.
So I think in terms of strategy, it will be just that, like, filtering out the negative things that people say to you and affirming yourself and surrounding yourself with affirming. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. And that's why I think that, because I know that with traditional Nigerian parents, sometimes they're not very, because obviously based on how they grew up, they're not very open about how they feel. I know my mom was that way. It's just recently that my mom started telling me I love you and hugging me, and I'm like, who is this? Like, you didn't do all this when you were younger. Why didn't you do? I needed this. But they don't really. At least some traditional parents won't really tell you these things. They just kind of show up for you in other ways in your life because they think, well, I'm paying your tuition, so you should know that I think you're worth it, or I love you, and all of that, or what I think of you. But these things, especially with kids that like they take in everything they hear, or when you're younger, I think these things are important to say. But also going into that, I know that sometimes, or at least me, at some points in my life, I used to think when I would hear these things from friends and family, I used to think, well, you're my friend, you're my family, so you're expected to tell me nice things or expected to praise me in this way. And that's why right now I'm so passionate about sort of spotlighting women or shouting at women when I see that they are doing hard work, especially women that aren't really like out there or public, because, or even women that are public, because it actually does help to hear these things from people that don't know you directly. They just know
Yeah.
about your work or see everything you're doing. Um, so yeah, I agree. I completely agree with everything you said, and I wanted to. I know that we don't have much time on here, but I will like to eventually have that Christianity conversation with you, because there's so many. thoughts I have, and I would just like to hear what you think, and how you sort of came into your own Christianity or religion, even though you grew up that way, but you were not arrested by God, like you said.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, actually, I grew up in a Muslim family. Although I
Oh,
went to a Christian school. So yeah, we can maybe we do another episode about that sometime in the future. And maybe I
yeah.
should actually talk about my journey to Christianity as an episode. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much. We didn't even talk about UX and friendship, but I really liked the conversation that we had. And we should definitely do another podcast episode because this was so much fun. Thank you so much, Hillary, for coming on my podcast. And yay. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
this was so much fun. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode. You can connect with Hillary on Twitter. I have put her Twitter link in the show notes and also the links to all the other things we reference in the episode. Bye.